Hey guys, it's Classic DM. It's been a while, but I wanted to bring you back and take a look at this Dark Beneath the Ice conversion I did for Pathfinder 2nd Edition. It also includes updates for the remastered version. Now, those of you who don't remember, Paizo broke away from the OGL and created the Orc license, like this open RPG license, and moved the entire Pathfinder 2nd Edition game into that license, which means that anyone can do anything they want to do with the license. It's very, very wide open. It's Pathfinder compatible still, but it's not under the OGL, which is kind of nice. This is all coming from the whole, Wizards of the Coast threatening to get rid of the OGL, which has been around for like 24, 25 years. So I want to run through this adventure for you. Now, if you are going to play it, you don't want to watch this, right? This is going to be me talking about the adventure, how to run it as a game master, the themes behind some of the areas, some of the things the players might run into. So this is really a game master oriented video. I did a kind of like silent flip through the other day for people thinking of buying it. It's like a $4.99 module adventure. I worked on it like 2 years ago and updated it in a lot of play testing. I wanted to convert it to Pathfinder because a lot of traffic I've been getting lately, oddly enough, despite all the hardcore AD&D people on the channel, it's been a lot of Pathfinder people. So I kind of want to give back to them, let them find something that's interesting. So with all my modules, you got a front page, cover page, you got all the, citations, everything is hyperlinked. This is something I did way back in 2019 with the Indigo Oasis. The Indigo Oasis was an adventure I did originally for Pathfinder 2nd Edition when it first came out, right? And it was really designed to be free. It was initially free for about 3 years, and then I started charging money for it after I refined the hell out of it and put a lot more production value into it. But the thing with that adventure was I did it as a PowerPoint and then converted to PDF. Means it's landscape. Now we all know that if you buy anything, you're buying a book. It's like buying a college book. You get this 2-column format, fonts extremely freaking small. If you're using a slate or a laptop, it's really hard to read everything when it's so small. Now, if you're using a laptop, though, if you have this font size a little larger and things are in landscape, at a glance, you can kind of get better information. And that was the whole theme, is that every room kind of has one page for it. So unlike the old TSR stuff with the 2-column format, I started doing this format a number of years ago, and I had a bunch of people email me and say, if your other adventures that you've done that have been the little black book format were in this format, I'd buy them. I was like, okay, I can do that. No problem. So let's go back to this one, The Dark Beneath the Ice. The whole theme of this adventure really leans on my childhood memories of playing the Vault of the Drow. If you ever played the Vault of the Drow, which is D3 from the original Advanced Dungeons and Dragons years of like 77 to 85 or something, there is a player map and then there's a game master, a dungeon master map that has these massive underground, underdark hexes before it was even called the Underdark, before there was Drit Steward and any of that kind of shit, right? So the whole drow houses were totally terrifying. They had really nasty poison, like -4 to saving throw, knock you unconscious, wipe a whole high level party of level 13 guys out in like 2 or 3 melee rounds if you weren't very careful. This adventure wants to capture that vibe without going as hardcore into the random encounter drow patrol type thing. I wanted to give it a location that has a function, okay? And one element of the old days with the Vault of the Drow, they also introduced, besides the Drow Elves, was the Dökkar, which was renamed in Pathfinder 2nd Edition to something else and then renamed again. And I renamed it because I wanted to capture the exact stat blocks of what the original kind of dark, underground, evil, chaotic, self-serving, criminal, dwarven race was that does business with the drow, right? And we can't use the word drow or drew, however you want to pronounce it. We got to use dark elf, right? And that's all because of licensing. So we have this Arctic, okay, not typical underdark type of world. We have this underground cavern in the Arctic, hundreds of miles of an underground river, and there's an outpost here, and it's a prison outpost because these basically, dark dwarves have partnered up with these dark elves, and they're raiding the surface where there's these Arctic whaling, Arctic elves. So everything all kind of wraps around that Greenland, Iceland, Norway, the Arctic, northern parts of Canada, the Eskimo, Alaska, northern Siberian, that whole part of the world where people survive on whaling, right? but we've got these, dark elves and these dark dwarves, the Dökkar, who are raiding and then capturing prisoners. So with this adventure, one thing about that's quite cool is instead of it just being a dungeon where you start in room one and then go through some traps and then some pit doors in room two, like the Tomb of Horrors, is it's a location. And so because it's a location means you can use it in two or three different ways. But before we get into that kind of detail, I kind of want to go over this text formatting. I loved when the old school AD&D adventures gave me something to read to the damn players so I didn't have to make up a bunch of crap. But I wanted to be able to glean out of the text the things I might want to paraphrase. And this is something that those old classic adventures started doing with like the Hidden Shrine of Tomoe-shan and things like that. They started giving this box, saying, read this to your players, show them illustration 25C. But then inside the actual game master information, it would be so buried away would be details about the chest and the lockers and the gyms in it, and the alarm would alert the other guys down the hall, and you'd be like, oh god, I read the thing to my players, they started playing it, but there's this other additional information about how to open the door, and I freaking didn't know what the hell that was, so I don't know what to do. So what I did is I try to highlight that stuff in green, like you're seeing right here. So you have stuff that's inside this beige, this gray box in blue, that's all going to be read that verbatim to the players, like when they first get to the area. Then as you're playing through, if you see stuff in green, you need to kind of paraphrase that in your own way, like however you want to do it as a dungeon master. Now, yellow concepts are always going to be like game-centric weirdness you need to make sure you're catching up on. And one thing I did with this one as well, like I did with the old days with the Indigo Oasis, is I put citations everywhere. And this isn't just doing like MLA citations for a paper in college. In the modern world, you either have the book or you have a PDF of the book, or you're using the archives of Nethys to look stuff up. A lot of people are using their phone to look up stuff really quickly. Some people are using, slates and laptops. Some people just have the books at the table. So this way, every time you see a hyperlink, you're going to see the hyperlink is going to go to the archives of Nethys, but it's going to say the book page number, right? So for example, you might say, GM Core page 91, like you see down here. And if you click on the hyperlink, it's going to go to the actual web page. Let's just open up a web page real quick. So that'll open up a web page for this particular article about currents and flowing water and how to handle it in, Path of Exile. Excuse me, Pathfinder. So let's go back to the actual adventure. All right, let's get into this here. Now, I mentioned that it's going to be a location, and I mentioned it has two themes. So you have the basic ideas are two. One, you're hired by the Arctic Elves of the region to go rescue someone. Really simple. They've been captured by a drow dark elf, dark dwarven Dökkar raiding party, and you got to go in there and rescue them. Now you can put your own flair on that. I suggest, make it like a child, like I did years and years ago when I ran G1 and rewrote the story for that. It can be anything. It can be a noble daughter going to get married. Anything you want to do that makes it feel like whoever's ruling those Arctic elves is infuriated and really wants this person rescued. It's not just Billy the fisherman, okay? Somebody important to that whole society. Now, if you do that, you're integrating the local population and you're going to let them gear up the players, like with a whaling boat and clampons and silken cords and carbiners and all the things they would need to navigate into this location. And these Arctic elves would know enough information about where these guys operate out of to tell you where to go look, right? Like here's a German submarine base in this fjord in Norway, but we're not going to go there. But that's where you need to go because you're a heroic person, right? So that's one thing about this whole adventure I think is a really cool element, is that you have these options on how you want to run it, right? You don't have to just make it start in area 1 and go to area 2 and area 3. Now, the other option, years ago, I did a module for Pathfinder and for AD&D and Osric called Order of Succession, right? Order of Succession was a really long, drawn-out kind of a storyline element based around Christmas time, et cetera, et cetera. And in that storyline, this dark elf priestess has tricked this young boy into, giving up his family, his two younger siblings, et cetera. It's all jealousy and family. It's a cool adventure. I'm going to probably convert that one over to this module format as well. But you could also use this as you got captured. So like some of those classic AD&D adventures like A3 and the Dungeon of the Slave Lords, where the players start off with no gear and they're trapped and they're in a prison. You're in a drow prison, or in this case, a dark elf prison. Let's just put it that way. You'll hear me say drow and dark elf interchangeably. You know what I mean. So with those two adventure seeds, you have an infiltration mission, kind of like Top Secret, right? The classic TSR game Top Secret, a James Bond film. And then the second reason you have it is you've been captured and you've got to escape. So between those two things, you have options on how you want to integrate this into your world. The only thing I would ask you to do is just keep it with the Arctic theme. So I'm going to read this background part to you because I think it's worth you kind of understanding where the themes came from, right? So legends tell of hidden dark elven cities deep beneath the surface in massive lightless caverns near underground lakes and rivers, all controlled by multiple noble families called houses. Stories tell us that due to chaotic evil nature of these dark elven societies and their demon goddess, the noble houses all jockey for favor by backstabbing one another, and if possible, bring about the complete destruction of the next in line. Their pursuit of power is unquenched and ruthless. You know, this is the non-copyright infringement way of me telling you that this is really like a drow story, dude. This is dark elven society. Now, a clan of the Dökkar, or Dökkar, a dour dwarven race, once drew power from their dwarven deity. Their god believed that one should be free to do whatever is necessary to accomplish one's goals, which includes lying, cheating, exploiting others, committing crimes. So you got this, just like the Dwargar, you got this evil group of, they're not the deep gnomes. They're these dark dwarven race, right? It was in this context that the clan was almost destroyed and sent into exile. Stripped of their powers and realizing they'd be hunted down and killed, they decided to renounce their god and go it alone. In exile, they traveled north to the frozen Arctic, where no enemies would find them, and once there, they forged a new life based on profit and slave trade. Excuse me. So both of these exiled groups ultimately began working together, and they took over the underworld in the Arctic region, which I think is a really neat twist. The famous scientist guy, this Tyson guy, I can't remember his last name. He's an African American guy. He's really smart. Has this like sleepy eye kind of thing going on, but he's really smart. He's kind of like the new modern day Carl Sagan. He recently went to Antarctica with his son and his son's girlfriend, a bunch of other people that are famous, some astronauts, and it's really, really cool to see. It's on YouTube, right? Look it up. Tyson Grayson, I can't remember his damn name, but he's really smart, really intelligent. He does a bunch of podcasts. He recently went to the Antarctica and it was like an alien world, right? And that was a really cool thing to look at if you want to do something that feels really different. And the George Clooney movie, The Midnight Sky, is way up in the North Pole after a nuclear war, and there's a ship out in space trying to find a moon to put mankind on. So if you want to, mess around with Arctic themes, between all the freezing water and the glaciers and the ice flows, there's so many really cool things you can do here. There's visual imagery that's different. Even when the damn Conan movies had an Arctic thing. So because of this, we've got this underworld group operating with boats on the surface coming up from the Underdark or the underworld. This whole thing has a, river current and temperature problem going on, right? And so you've got freezing water, but it's salt water. So it doesn't freeze solid. So if people jump in this water, you got about 10 minutes before you're dead from hypothermia. So it's something to keep it kind of scary, right? You're not falling overboard and treading water and go, gosh, let me jump back in the boat. You can die if you get into this kind of water because it's so cold. Doesn't matter what, ancestry or race you're playing in. So map and location key. I want to talk about this real quickly before we get into each individual area. This map begins with this Arctic flow coming from this area 18. So you're going to be, if you're infiltrating this place, you're coming upstream. All the rivers are flowing to the south. We got a north here in the lower right-hand corner, right? So as you approach this place, there's these large arching bridges over this flow here and this flow of here. There's a waterfall here at area 19. So you got this whole compound's kind of bisecting this rivers, or I guess you say the underground frozen rivers are bisecting it. The roof lines are all going to be ice caverns, right? So imagine all the blues and the color, and that's described here in the module to read to players. This section of this, we'll call it a dungeon to keep it simple, is all barracks and supplies and shipping and receiving, all the fight to the death type infiltration stuff where you're lucky having G1 and studying Hill Giant Chief. This area here is prison. So you have prisoners. If you're playing as your party's been captured, these are prison cells. They're going to break out of prison. There's going to be a jailer. There's a captain of the guard type character in here who's like a warlord. And then if you go to this area over here, you've got some other NPCs that have been captured, some scholars that were sent on a mission to the Arctic area that have been captured. And you've got this dwarven altar that's in this area here that is like a transportation device that they're using to interlink through all these different outposts all over your game world, right? You won't be able to use it until the very end. And lastly, where we get this area down here, we have the high priestess and a whole like nunnery in a way, if you can say such a thing, and where sacrifices happen. And this is all hardcore dark elf area. So the dark dwarven race is pretty much working as meat and muscle for this drow dark elf encampment. And this whole area of highlighted in blue is where they operate with the prisoners and processing and standing guard. You don't have a bunch of drow males running around doing this, but all the females that are running all the priestess stuff, they're all down here. And this is where the really traumatic or dramatic ending actually takes place. But this is one thing that's cool about it. When we used to play Top Secret, the fun thing is when you have an outpost where you're breaking into a prison, or if you're breaking into some kind of museum or a place like this, there's no right or wrong way to go about it. So your players might just, invent a new way to get up this waterfall at Area 19 and figure out a way to enter the whole complex by coming in here at Area 6. Or they might just come up here and take a boat all the way up to the shoreline at Area 15 that has a little sandy shoreline and a place to dock boats and break into the whole compound from the barracks. Or they might be a situation where they found a way to get up onto this bridge and then run into this area. There's all kinds of different ways to get into here. The good thing is that the drow or dark elf priestess area is a little bit more tucked away to the right. So most people don't end up in playtesting ever coming here till late. I've had people that have kind of shortcutted the whole adventure and just did this area, and that's fine because it's all that matters. You don't have to do everything. All right, so we've got descriptions of this whole outpost, what it's built, what it looks like, etc., etc. Then what we try to do with the whole adventure is break everything down into a particular area with everything you need to know to run this area. And since the prison area could be you're breaking out of prison, or whether you're coming in and finding NPCs have been captured or trying to rescue people, this one gets like a full page just to itself, right? This is area 1. From there, we go into the sparring area, which is area 2. So this is a large open hall where the prison guards are. These are all A, B, C, D, E, F, G. These are all the prison cells. So if someone ends up breaking out of prison or you come into this area, the guards are, sometimes using some of the prisoners as a combat to prove how much a better fighter they are. And remember, that's all these dark dwarves, the Dökkar, that we're using in this adventure, like the Dökkar. So these aren't drow males doing this. These are the dwarves. So they're all, they love to fight. They're the muscle, they're the meat, they're the meatheads. So they're the ones that like to do this kind of stuff. They think it's a lot of fun. So when you get past this area, you have all kinds of loot and stuff like that the players can get their hands on and equip themselves. If their gear is here, if they're escaping, or if they're getting some prisoners out and have to work their way out, they may be able to control this entire area quite easily. From there, we kind of go into this ancient dwarven altar. This is a transportation device used with this really ancient, dark elf technology that connects all these ancient dwarven ruins together throughout the game world. It's not something the players will figure out when they first get there. It gives them clues about, hey, here's an indentation, something could fit into this. I can see the designs are verse. It's got all these ancient runes on it. There's guards here, of course, but it's something to tease the players they might want to come back to later. One of the things we found to be a lot of fun in the Temple of Elemental Evil, even though I hate the dungeon, but still a lot of fun, is there's nothing cooler than playing a D&D adventure. And it takes time, right? And seeing something early in the adventure and kind of remembering it, like a secret door or passageway went left and went right, and going off and doing a whole bunch of stuff for a whole day, and then come back to the next section, you think to yourself, we never did go to the right-hand side. Let's go check that out. So these kind of teasing things like this ancient dwarven altar is a way for you to integrate this into a sequel, right? Another adventure or a clue as to how do I activate this thing. And also we put in this area 3 a way for you to overhear what the guards are talking about. Like if you can understand a dwarven language and hear what they're talking about, or if you understand undercommon as they have it in Pathfinder and Paizo's world, if you can somehow understand the languages of what they're talking, these are the kinds of things they'd be talking about. So that's really useful for the infiltration kind of vibe, right? Which is really important. So you'll find that a lot of the descriptions in the whole adventure, besides telling you what you see, what's happening, giving you a sense of vibe about the color, things like that, what the shape of the room is, all this stuff, all the information kind of has this, like you're infiltrating, either escaping or you're going in the front door, and you're escaping as a prisoner yourself. You're going in the front door and trying to just take over the place, right? And we talk about the current here and how to handle this icy flow water, which is like 28.8 degrees Fahrenheit. I'm not sure what the Celsius conversion is for you guys. So we have, every single area has these type of descriptions for it. Like, for example, the Talon Bridge, this black volcanic stone bridge arches over the fast flowing spring fed river below. The two Dökkar guards stand at the top of the bridge's arch, talking casually. The surface of water is 30 feet below the edge of the peak of the bridge, and the cavern has a tall ceiling that extends another 50 feet above. The water is 30 feet deep, crystal clear, glows like a rainbow from a beautiful array of luminescent underwater plants. If you ever read the Vault of the Drow, a lot of the lighting in the Underdark in the original was all like glowing, luminescent plants and things like that. So we kind of wanted to capture that kind of vibe one more time for people that have, want to connect it to that old Vault of the Drow type stuff. So, we got the descriptions, all the game master information is here. One thing I did, unlike the TSR modules, is I put all the enemies in the back so you can print that page out and have it separately. And you can just jump over that page if you have a combat encounter. So if I tell you in Pathfinder, they use consistent hit points, you're not seeing an entry that says things like 6 ogres hit points 17, 18, 21, 22, 20. They don't do that in Pathfinder. Pathfinder, everything is a consistent hit point number. So all the enemies are in the back. So when I mentioned a Dökkar guard, here's your stat block. The Dökkar jailer, here's your stat block. If you want to have a typical Dark Elf priestess, you've got their stat block, and you have the Dökkar warlord, who's like a named NPC. His stat block is here as well, and of course, High Priestess Nylene, a House Ronquar, is like the huge leader of the entire area, who's a level 10 creature. And this whole thing is designed around a party of 4, 5, 6 level 5 player characters. So it's not that difficult for them to figure out ways to defeat her, and she's not that hard to fight, really, to tell you the truth. It just requires a lot of improvisation. It's not like she's a melee machine going to destroy everyone. But that's the format of the adventure. And so when you go through each area, you get a little blown up picture of the map itself. It describes the office. It tells you like rules you need to look up, like keen weapons. That instead of making everything adamantite and +2, 3, and 4, because he's a different type of magic rune system in Pathfinder they do in AD&D, you need to kind of remember what does the keen weapon effect do, and what's the unconscious condition do for you. So I try to link all that stuff for you. So even if you've never played an adventure in Pathfinder and you don't really remember what a trip what trip versus keen weapon type trait does for you, you can just click on it real quick and just update yourself really quickly. Or if you got the books, you can look at GM Core page 238. I thought that was pretty useful. That kind of format gives you a way of, hey, I got everything I need to know in the adventure. I don't have to memorize everything. And in the old days, we would have to memorize everything. We have to look stuff up all the time. It's really a pain in the butt. In a modern day, people kind of just wing it sometimes. And this gives you the facts you might need in case something tricky happens to you. As we start moving through this adventure, let me show you the overall map again. The way it's described here is we start in this area up here. Let's go up here. We start the descriptions this area here, and then we work our way over here to this right, every section here, and then we start going down towards this Drow priestess, Dark Elf priestess area here. These area here are described separately and later in the adventure because most people I found end up doing things in this order on this side. So I decided just to make sure, just describe everything that way. I just thought it'd be so much easier. So as we get to that area, we start working our way a little closer. We get down to this, the entrance to the whole priestess chamber, which is really crazy. This whole ceremony room is really neat. You get this massive black alloy gate. It will lie open before this purple glowing 50-foot by 50-foot chamber with a massive vaulted ceiling extending 100 feet high with detailed frescoes and reliefs adorning the 4 chamfered corners. The frescoes show dark elven armies violently defending opposing armies of dwarves, strange octopus-headed monstrosities, surface elves, and men on horses driving chariots across the desert dunes. That's a cool image, isn't it? The floor is a gleaming black volcanic rock, looks to be as slippery as polished marble. The floor is inlaid with silvery runes and markers in a radial pattern as if designating where people should stand, all facing the center of where a 10-foot diameter magic circle in gold and silver sits, with 20 1-inch diameter holes around the center. 2 female Dark Elven priestesses are kneeling near the circle in prayer, facing southeast. Around the perimeter of the room are 16 silver candelabras with purple candles, all silently flicking with a strange purple light that fills the air with the musky incense that smells like the blend of warm iron and burned blood. So wow, really cool introduction to what's my take on a drow priestess ceremony room. That's pretty scary. And you got all the game information here, like what they're going to do. You know, if you end up taking the candelabras, how much they're worth, that kind of stuff. You got to always do that when you're doing these kind of classic vibed adventures. You know, from there we move over to this actual sacrificial altar room, which is area 11, which is this area here. And then we've got this priestess dormitory where they're almost like scholars and monks writing, and there's like thousands of scrolls on the wall. So you're going to bump into some priestesses in there. Then you get into this really crazy area, the High Priestess Nylene's chambers. This is where I really wanted to kind of, capture that cool astral plane secondary pocket universe craziness that you don't really see in any D&D adventures anymore, but we used to have that happen to us all the time. Like the Rainbow Bridge with Thor. I mean, we were kids and we got a copy of Deities and Demigods. We went crazy astral plane, ethereal plane. We loved Githyanki and Githzerai. So this part here, if you actually encounter High Priestess Nylene, she's in her chamber, right? In front of this small little reflecting pool, like meditating in a trance. And when you walk into the room, if you wake her up, you have this combat sequence where you start fighting her. And if things start going bad for her, she'll like yell out, I call for help, my demoness deliver me. And it allows her to plane shift. Now, this is really a D&D word, right? But we wanted to keep this theme alive because she disappears from view. She touches her necklace and she completely disappears. But then in this tiny little round reflecting pool, the players will see like this miniature version of her, right? Rowing a boat across this black ocean with this big black ship. And she's trying to row the little boat towards the black ship. And she's like trying to get away. And she's about the size of a thimble. And if you reach down the water and touch it, you get transported into this like pocket universe, which for me is like, holy crap, that's right out of a science fiction movie, right? It's something you see in Elric and Melonbone. And so to do something like this, I thought would be really exciting for players because so far it's been like sneak up on some guards, kill guards, look for keys, get your gear, talk to some stupid prisoners. Everything seems kind of like, yeah, this is going to be more of this for the next 2 hours. But then when you get into this area, things are crazy because this dark elf group has got an association with a different demoness. This isn't Lolth or a spider demoness anymore. They're exiles. So you have this really cool situations where the players can be transported and they're in a boat and Priestess Nylene is in a boat rowing her ass off trying to get to this massive, huge ghost ship that's covered in black that has this demoness on it who's just watching and not even interfering. And so as she's trying to get away, you got to stop her and get to her. And if you can get to her and fight her boat to boat, jump on her boat, beat the shit out of her, kill her, and it's going to be a nasty fight because you're in this water and you're on these two little boats and there's nowhere else to fight. It's just really, really different dynamic than a typical, like, I move 5 feet here and 20, it's the whole moving around battle map thing kind of goes out the window. So this lets you play this as theater of the mind without having to do the battle map stuff as much. And it becomes much more of a Black Mirror type of a vibe. I hate to refer to it that way, but so much more fantastical. And so if you defeat her and you get her necklace, this is where the real neat stuff happens. If you defeat her, you're all whisked back to where you were in her chambers, and now you can access her vaults. And in her vaults, there's all this different cool treasure. She's got stolen diamond engagement rings. She's got thousands and thousands of scrolls. But there's this one artifact. I always love putting an artifact, a unique, magic item that no one else will ever get. And that comes from me being influenced by, White Plume Mountain, the Black Razor and Wave. And what was the other? And there was another one. There was like a hammer. I forgot what it was. There was Wave and Black Razor, Wave, and I can't remember the other one. But there was 3 magical weapons. And we always loved that as kids. It was just so much neater to find something, a custom artifact item, than it was to like find a rod of 7 parts, right? So this book of Black Death, which has this great photograph on the right, it allows a person to cause a plague into an area about the size of 1 square mile. To afflict the region, the person has to stand at a center point and put their finger in the soil while holding the book in their hand. From there, the disease spreads outward until it encapsulates the entire area, and they can only do that once per week. And talk about some nasty, you could just destroy a small village this way, right? The disease will spread rapidly, highly contagious, and will spread outside the 1 mile by 1 mile area. It's very similar to the bacterium Yersinia pestis, which is what caused the Black Plague, the Black Death in the Middle Ages. You can also use the book to cure someone by simply reading a passage, then touching the afflicted person. So you have this kind of like Jesus Christ element to it. It's like you can cause all this pain and suffering. You can also make yourself look like you're the savior. You're saving and healing people, and that gives you players kind of a ethical dilemma to think about. Whether you believe in religion or not, it gives you this Messiah-like power, right? If you can cause affliction to happen at such a nasty scale that will ultimately kill people of a population and even wildlife, but you also hold the power to cure, but on an individual basis. I mean, from a role playing perspective, that could be incredible. Can you imagine doing that in a city adventure? Oh my God, it'd be crazy. So the book is written in Dark Elven, includes over 100 pages of architectural drawings, plans, and diagrams of towers and circular adamant rings, like you see in the picture here. And if you ever build these towers, they allow you to project this power to a location that's not near you anymore. So you don't necessarily have to touch the ground where it happens. So that's a long term goal for very evil or who knows what kind of players. Your next adventure might be to go to seek out these towers and destroy them. Like, how do we know that they haven't already built these things? So this is the real climax of the whole adventure. This really crazy, fight against the High Priestess Nylene in the Pocket Universe. The amazing artifact to push your players in a situation like, wow, what can we do with this? How does this work? And then from there, we've got, like I said before, we've got these other locations, which are like the shipping warehouse, the sandy beach, where all the boats are coming and going, delivering prisoners and slaves. You got an armory, you got a barracks. This is all the hack and slash type G1 stuff against all the dwarves again, and then the final location. And as I mentioned earlier, you got all the, stat blocks are here, like page 23, 24, 25, everything you need to know. There is lore in the back, right? Lore is important for you to read my lore and change it. Like, read the lore I came up with, and like, I don't want to use this demoness Ultiana, the Lady of Revenge. I just want to use Lolth. Like, you go ahead, yeah, do what you want to do with it. So it was really fun taking this and bringing it back with that classic, Indigo Oasis vibe. I put some links to some of my other stuff if you're interested in checking that kind of stuff out. It was really fun to do this. I really like the final battle. I think it's really creative and really neat. I hope you'll pick this up and check it out and tell me what you think of it. It's been doing pretty well on Drive Through RPG and also on my website. But if you like these kind of adventures, these videos, let me know, and I'll make more of them as I get time. All right, guys, thanks very much for listening, and we hope to see you out there somewhere. Be careful.